It is Thursday on Raid Shadow Legends, but you knew that. We're taking a break from live arena today for quite a good reason, because after some back and forth we finally got to Gold 4. Now, a lot of my matches from the previous finishing points were a bit messy and not particularly great quality, which is why we didn't upload it, and you see my overall score is kind of average, but we can't all be the people on the top who, well, speak for themselves. But you're not here to hear me harp on about live arena. You're here for the topic of this video, which is how bad mythicals need to exist to make the good ones look better. Although, really, if you wanted to starsage, it didn't matter if you got 50 Lazarius and 80 Crixia, they're not a starsage. And you know as well as I do that then adding more starsage likes into the game purely so that you can't get him, and so that the game isn't drowning in 10 different copies of King Starsage. So to begin, and one thing we are going to do for a bit of easy reference is, as I go over their skills and why they are not great, I will show their damage multipliers instead of just saying them, to save you a few seconds here and there. Now, none of these are like terrible, useless champions. They will still contribute to your account in some way, shape or form, but they're not Starsage, they're not Crixia, they're not Lazarius. You get the idea. If you get these over any of those, you're probably not too happy. So, in no particular order, we are going to begin with Aphidus the hivelord, who is designed mostly as a Hydra mythical, although we do have Hydras who are good in mythical, and he is not one of them. Beginning with Blink Cut, this attacks enemy and gives you a perfect veil, although you either have a team that has perfect veil on a full uptime regardless, or you're using Inquisitor Shamal, so you don't care, or you're just using the Trunda comp and you don't care regardless. So this is basically just attacks enemy, and that's all it does. Now, I feel this should always veil him regardless, and then someone else who doesn't already have a veil on them, or just do something else, because these sort of effects never work entirely how you'd like. Next is, okay, he gives increased attack, he increases debuff duration, that's all it does. Again, we have champions who do this effect and much more in the same skill. So this should increase debuffs by 2 turns. I'd say also give increased crit damage, just to try and get some more damage out of himself or your team. Or also reduce buff duration on enemies if they proceed to have it, because this is pretty weak as is. And then we have, this either places debuffs, places HP burn debuff, or detonates it. It doesn't do both. It's worse than Sulfurion by a very sizable margin. I feel this should always place the HP burn, ignore Poison Cloud, and then detonate it, and have it going for another turn as well, because otherwise you have 1 turn of HP burn on you, and that's not going to last too long. And moving over to his passive, I don't believe this stacks with Cruelty, and if you have decent souls in your team, if you don't, join the club, then this won't stack, and this will be 40% at most, unless you're bringing him to Spider for some reason. I feel this should just be 25% crit damage per stack to max this out, and this should go up to 100% because his damage ratios aren't particularly high. So switching forms, he turns into Borgoth from Doom Tower. Honestly, you'd rather just have Borgoth than this guy. You have this, which is, for all intents and purposes, attacks from enemy. You either have champions who aren't building accuracy in the first place, who are going to get this buff and won't do anything with it, or your debuffers have enough accuracy in the first place, so they don't care if you give them increased accuracy. So this should just be a different buff entirely. Increased accuracies on the A1s just never work. Have it be increased defense or heal an ally or something. Next is, and if this is meant to be a Hydra skill, Hydra champion even, then why are we trying to stun things? Okay, if no stun debuffs were placed, then it puts our allies. What happens if you're using this in Doom Tower or Arena? Don't use this champion in Arena. Just don't. Then you 3% to stun or get resisted. You don't get heals on anyone at all. Why can't it just do both? Really? And speaking of increased accuracy, why not place for increased accuracy, then attack our enemies with the stun? Why not? I don't know. And then we have a provoke. He only places strengthen on himself and increased defense after 2 turns. Give this strengthen and increased defense for 3 turns, and I suppose it's alright at that point if he has the increased accuracy from this, but if he doesn't, then yeah. Or just make it a 2-turn provoke. We have a champion who places a 2-turn, lose 2 turns and a 2-turn cooldown, so surely we can have him place 2 turns of provoke, right? And then his passive, okay, we can, fine. Stun, we're going to try and stun Hydra. We can't stun Hydra, what does this do? And this should just give him 2 for 2. Make it so he does some kind of damage, because his defense stat isn't that high compared to some other champions, even legendaries, and he loses crit damage, so yeah. Like, come on now. Next is Calamitus. If you get this guy, it's a bit of a calamity, because you could have gotten a good mythical, you get him. So base form, I believe he's designed for Arena, I would say. He doesn't really fit elsewhere. So he heals himself or restores destroyed max HP. That's great. This is not a durable champion. If he's getting hit in Arena, it's either for 5% of his HP because he got hit by a support, or he's going down. There's no 2 ways about it. So this should instead increase his attack by 5% or something on each hit, so he's just scaling up over the course of a battle and becomes more of a threat, because he's not much of a threat, I'll be honest. A2 is pretty much Ramontu Drake's Blood A2, but worse, because it's not void, but it does ignore 10% of defense. Great. Thank you, that really matters. Have this ignore some more defense, or make it so that he's not going to just turn into a sheep the moment he places his block buffs, because that's what's going to happen a lot of the time. Or ignore some other kind of damage mitigation or ways to block debuffs. Wow, what if it ignored block debuffs? That'd be good now, wouldn't it? And then we have this. This is always critical. That's great. Building him with 100% critical rate anyway. Unless this means it ignores reaction or can't weak hit. If it can, then answer in the comments. You know this better than me. But there's one thing this champion is missing, and it is a way to give himself increased attack. So why not do that? What if we don't have one in our team? What if it got taken off him? He just, and therefore, just doesn't do too much damage. So give him that. And some ignore defense, ignore shield, ignore unkillable, maybe. Because giving himself self-defense on kill is fine, but what happens if he doesn't kill in the first place? What am I supposed to do? Wait another 4 turns. And then his passive heals him. Again, he either dies in 1 hit, or he's taking like no damage in the first place. So Either give him the increased attack on this at the start of his turn, like Lazarius, or remove a debuff or something, because the immortal creation is not actually that immortal, and if it was immortal, he'd bring himself back to life. Just like another champion who you see a lot in Arena, who's also green affinity, who's also attack. Wow, that's a thought, isn't it? So then we switch forms, and he goes from Arena to Hydra, or at least that I think is a point. So honestly, I would say that he's okay in Hydra in terms of AoEs, placing Hex, damage increasing. Based off this is kind of useless in Hydra because the heads don't die, they just turn into a different form. But there is one thing this champion is missing for boss killing and Hydra in general, and that's enemy max HP effects. Because you try using this guy in Hydra, the heads have so much defense that he loses a ton of damage. Make this deal double damage or something. Enemy max HP. Hello? Please? You get the idea. So next is going to be Frolni the Mechanist, which has the main issue that this champion is completely unfocused, and you will find out. First off, he has the issue where for arena usage, he starts out in his damage dealer form. Now what happens if he gets locked out? Switch form? Oh, this form isn't a damage dealer. What happens if we wanted to start out in Stone Skin and make it so that we live for a turn and then try and switch forms to our damage dealing form? We can't do it because we start out of damage dealing form. See? So going over his skills in general, he attacks an enemy, that's all it does. Ignores some defense if there's a bunch of buffs on him, but you have to get some pretty sizable amount of buffs to ignore sizable amount of defense. This doesn't ignore any damage mitigation whatsoever. Steals some buffs and doesn't check accuracy, which is fine. Also, to go back to Calamitus 1 second, this shouldn't check accuracy. Nothing else on his arena form kit does so, and he's going to get polymorphed half the time in a way, so just make it so he's can't be resisted, okay? Anyway, going back to Frolni, this is okay. Base damage is fine, but doesn't ignore any mitigation whatsoever, apart from if you steal it, but what if you can't steal it? What then? And then AoE, ignores nothing again. His damage is a bit low because it's balanced around Liss, which is intended for playing whack-a-mole with an enemy Sun Wukong or anyone else who is being revived over and over from the enemy team. But if he's against a tanky team, he's going to struggle to kill them a lot, which relegates him to a counter pick. And there is one other issue with HP damage dealers, and that is Life Harvest and any other max HP destruction effect. Because unless you have Miracle Heal or anything else which will give him his HP stat back, he's crippled for the rest of the fight. So then switching over to his alternate form, and here is the other issue with him. This is just a team defender. If you built him with HP, crit rate, crit damage, etc., none of that matters here at all. Because this just defends your team. And obviously, you know as well as I do how crit damage and eye protection works, so you have that problem going for it. This should remove block buffs from everyone at least first, or even just be a full cleanse. It's a mythical, come on now. This should remove healing reduction as well, so this doesn't get blocked, because otherwise all it is just attacks enemy, balance, that's all it does. Give him some turn meter so he goes again, because this isn't that great of a skill, and this increases his defense. he doesn't have counterattack anywhere at all, so he can't just do these and then also be able to increase his defense stat over and over. He has to be left clicking out of his own volition. And then you have this. Now, reflect 80% of damage. Looks good, right? Here's the issue. This ignores defense completely on the reflect. Frolni's does not. Make it ignore defense. It's a mythical. War Chief's legendary. He's not even any good by today's standards. Come on now. Also, stats are a bit low for mythical, but I mean, I guess a couple extra 1,000 HP, a couple extra 100 more defense wouldn't break him. It just wouldn't. Come on now. And the last one is going to be the brand new mythical Nace the Shadowthief, who again is incredibly unfocused. So starting off with his A1, attacks with enemy. That's all it does. Doesn't do anything else. Attacks all enemies. Steals turn meter if they have a lot of turn meter already. If they don't, it's an accuracy check, and nothing else in this champion's kit requires him to build accuracy whatsoever. The damage is fine, I guess, but apart from ignoring shield, it doesn't ignore any of mitigation whatsoever. So he's not the best arena champion in the regard, which is strange because you'd think with a block revive, he's meant to be an arena champion. But this doesn't ignore any defense or any of the sort whatsoever. It's a boss killing skill. Except it's not. Why doesn't this work on bosses? I mean, obviously, if it worked on bosses, he would steal an absolute ton of stats. So maybe have this also increase the turn meter if you use this against bosses, or ignore some defense overall, wherever it's bosses or enemies, or just if you're really scared of having a attack that ignores a bunch of defense and also permadeaths, then hang on a second. They just did this. And she's considered very strong now, but she's not exactly triple S tier breaks the game with this, so why can't this guy just have it as well? I really don't understand. And it's a single hit, so something like Ultimate Death will stop it entirely. Who he is bad affinity against, so you're pretty much never going to kill that champion. So, yeah. This would be good, except the fact that the target has to be half dead for them to do anything in the first place. Why couldn't it just be more damage based off the HP they have? Or just think of something else, because he's either going to be your lone damage dealer and is going to get no benefit out of this until they're in kill range already, or if you're really worried about his mediocre damage ratios doing way too much damage, then why is it okay for some mythicals to do an absolute ton of damage and some of us aren't? Also, again, Nice has the same issue as Frolni in how his damage dealing form is his based form. If he's locked out, he's stuck. Now, speaking of his alternate form, he turns into it when he'd otherwise die, but honestly, it would have been better off if he just died, because this doesn't deal much damage. This should deal more. Should fill his turn meter regardless, I would say. Or perhaps do something else, like destroy some of their max HP on hit to weaken them down, but it just doesn't do that. This is either a provoke or a stun, 3-turn cooldown, other champions do this better. Make it so that it's just can't be resisted no matter what, even... Let's see now. Yeah, because there's this awkward period between 30% and 75% where it's an accuracy check. it's hard for me to say that sometimes. And give him like increased crit damage or something before he does this, because this passive expects him to kill things to revive enemies, revive allies even. But if he can't do damage, he's not reviving anything. And again, this counterattack and block damage. That's great. Where's the taunt? Where's the way to force enemies to hit him? There isn't one. So they just ignore him and hit someone else. Then this goes away and he's pretty much useless because, yeah. Like, even if you do this, okay, you provoke them. Unless you have a way to take another turn immediately so that you can then place this counterattack and block damage on yourself, they take their turn, they hit you, or they're stunned, so it doesn't matter anyway. And then you do this, and what? So the champion design just makes no sense at all. And I understand how, again, we can't have 10 copies of Starsage in the game for both balance reasons, and so that people aren't just opening primals and getting Starsages left and right in different names and factions, but a little bit of effort would go a long way in terms of champion design. And besides, part of the reason why champions like Gizmak, Lazarius, Gallius are good in Arena is because their damage dealing form is their second form, so if they are locked out, then they are still good to go, and they can then do untold terrors upon the enemy team. So, yeah. See ya.